Good evening. Welcome to Let's Talk Autism Thursday. My name is Evelyn Fountain, and I am your host. I am the owner of Mom's Little Corner. And on Thursday, we talk autism. I am not a doctor, nor am I a licensed therapist. I'm only sharing my information on autism from having a son that is on the spectrum. So everything that I share is personal experience that I personally went through with having a son on the spectrum. Thank you for joining us Thursday nights. I really appreciate it. And I'm so happy to talk autism tonight. Tonight, I just wanted to talk about different services that my son has received since being diagnosed with autism and how I feel it has helped him throughout his journey on the spectrum. Welcome, Shirley Powerhouse, to the show tonight. We're just getting started. We are talking about services that my son has had since he's been diagnosed with autism. So, the first thing I want to talk about is how we started with services, period. And then I'll explain some of the different services that he had. When a child is diagnosed with autism, they pretty much see a doctor. They have some tests that are ran. The doctor asks a lot of questions of the parent. If the child is in school, they talk to the teachers and the social workers at the school. They do, well, let's see, what do they do? They come in and they observe the student. And so Daniel was probably 2.5. So the center that he went to childcare at allowed a young lady to come in, and she observed Daniel, and then she collected her studies, and this was after the doctor's appointment. So she collected everything. I feel like she watched them for maybe about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. And her title was an ABA specialist, which is applied behavior analyst. So she watched Daniel interact with students. She watched how he played with different toys, the way he interacted with the staff members. And that was the first service we received after getting the autism diagnosis. Once they did the testing for autism, of course, he came back as nonverbal because we knew that he wasn't speaking at that time. So some of the services that we talked about. The first thing was after the applied behavior analyst came to the center, we talked about early intervention. And early intervention is for children 0 to 3 years old. They go, for Daniel, it was a half day program. So he went to a half day program where he started to receive services in the schools, well, his first school setting. So the services that were talked about during our IEP meeting that Daniel was gonna receive was speech therapy, occupational therapy. Let's see, it's so many therapies to be honest. Speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and I'm pretty sure I'm leaving one out, but I'll go back and double check in a minute. So Daniel started to receive services. He went to early intervention 5 days a week from 8:30 to 12, and at 12 o'clock he would catch the bus home. So throughout his day, he did speech therapy, um, and with COVID, we all got the taste of if you have a child on the spectrum, what it's like to teach a child on the spectrum. It was a little bit rough, and I'll talk about that in a second. But so he did speech therapy, he did occupational therapy, he had a special education teacher. So he had a full time teacher. Well, full time for his the time that he was there, he had a full time teacher, and then the speech therapist was a separate teacher. The occupational therapist was a separate teacher, and a personal the physical therapy teacher was a separate teacher. So each teacher would meet with Daniel for maybe 20 minutes, depending on how his day was structured with his regular teacher. And also depending on how he was feeling, because just because you have these services don't mean that every day is going to be a good day and you're going to actually have 20 minutes of speech therapy. Sometimes Daniel would have meltdowns, which would take time away from the services that he was getting, so they would have to try to calm him down and then start the services with him. So when he was around 3, he was in the early intervention program, and then he also did extended school year. So we'll call it extended school year, although it's not typically a school because he was only 3 years old. So that means that he went to school during the summertime. So just like he did half days on the regular school year, he would do half days in the summertime, and he still does extended school year because he has an IEP. And if you have an IEP, you're offered extended school year. You do not have to do extended school year if you choose not to, but personally, I do it because it keeps him on his routine. So he does get a break when you do extended school year. I think it's about a week before, a week right when school stops, and then a couple of weeks before school start backs up, you get to have a break. But Daniel did early intervention up until 3 years old. And once he finished with early intervention, we did the kindergarten process, which when your child is graduating from early intervention, you have a meeting, and sorry guys, you have a meeting with whatever school district your child will be going to. You have a meeting with their special education teacher, the principal, their psychiatrist, and if your child is not going to be in a special ed class, you will have a meeting with the general ed kindergarten teacher. So for us, Daniel, Daniel's meeting happened, and I already kind of had a little bit of insight on my school district, and I knew that they had their general ed kindergarten centers because our kindergarten classes are not in the main buildings. We have kindergarten centers. So I knew that we had the kindergarten center, and then I knew that we had a kindergarten that was in a school that had like a little magnet program for special education students. And I preferred him to go to the specialized kindergarten class or the specialized program for autism. So when we had the meeting, I met both teachers, the general ed kindergarten teacher and the special ed kindergarten teacher, which was two different schools. Like I said, one was the kindergarten center and one was in the actual school that has a program for autistic children. And they both were very nice. They listened to what I had to say about who Daniel was and how he acts at home, and then they listened to the teacher that Daniel had from the early intervention school, and then we kind of all talked about what would be the best fit for him. And I let them know right out the bat that I prefer him to go to the school that he's in now. And after talking and, them looking at some of his paperwork, they also agreed that they thought that Daniel would be a better fit at the school that has the autism program. So for first grade, kindergarten, that's where he went. And he's there now. He's in second grade. So the process is kind of the same from early intervention, although now he has a full day. So he gets his speech therapy, his occupational therapy, and his PT, which is physical therapy, each day while he's at school, along with his regular studies that he would have with his teacher. So, okay, let's just fix my camera. So his school day is typical, like a typical second grader school day. He catches a bus in the morning, and this is a bus for special need kids. So he catches the bus in the morning. They drop him off at school, and he starts his day off in morning meeting, and just like in A regular general education class morning meeting kind of consists of days of the week, months of the year, introduction what kids are in class today. And so for Daniel, he kind of uses his communication device in school, or he'll use a visual aid to go over what the days of the month and the months of the year, what's the weather. So he uses the device and visual aids for that. Then he has speech therapy, which his therapist comes into his classroom and they use the communication device, and she used pictures to communicate and help Daniel communicate. Pretty much it's like him asking for things. So with the pictures, she'll show him something. Okay, so let's say she has a ball in her hand. She'll show him the ball, and then she'll have the picture of the ball, and she'll put the picture in her palm, or she'll put the picture down on the table. And Daniel has to either pick it up and request it by picking up the picture and putting it in the teacher's hand, or pointing to it so that she knows that he wants to use the ball. Then his physical therapist, she either comes into the classroom or takes him out of the classroom. Sometimes they go to the gym, and she works on physical therapy things. Like his first goal that he had was balancing, and then he had a goal of throwing the ball. I don't know how many feet he had to throw the ball, and then he had to practice catching the ball. And then with OT, they're working on those fine motor skills, so he has to like really concentrate, like cutting lines and stringing objects together. And let's see, I definitely feel like I'm missing one of his services, but right now I can't think of it. And I had to go look through some stuff and make sure I didn't miss anything. So he gets those services Monday through Friday. And then ABA, I know we talked about that for a little bit at the beginning. So ABA, you can have your child have an ABA service, but Daniel doesn't get ABA right now. He had it in the beginning, and then it kind of stopped when COVID hit. So COVID's like everybody has definitely taken toll on our services. In the beginning, when COVID first happened, everybody's school stopped. So they didn't really have a plan of how they were going to do services. Once they kind of got the plan and the tablets and the iPads came home, Daniel had to have block times for each of his services. So because he's special need and he has an IEP, he still had to get those services. Although he was not face to face with his therapist, I had to kind of be the mobile one-on-one at home with him. So what I would do is I have like a little educational corner, and we would sit there. And the beginning was very difficult because it wasn't his routine. When he has his services, he's kind of like, he knows the routine of I'm going into class and I can do this in my class, but at home, just like any other child, it's kind of like I'm at home, I want to be in play mode. So trying to switch from being in play mode and then being in, I had to get my work done, was kind of hard. The one service that did not work for the whole duration of COVID was PT. And I don't know why PT really didn't work, but PT did not work for us while we were at home. Speech therapy went okay. We had a lot of treats, because sometimes Daniel, he does better if he's I don't want to say rewarded, but he does better if he's getting something. If I need him to do something, if he sees that, okay, I'm going to get a cookie if I do what I'm supposed to do, he'll get his task done faster. So we did a lot of edible reinforcements for like speech therapy. The one thing that he was very comfortable doing at home was his circle time. He enjoyed seeing his teacher on the screen. I think that was kind of new for him, just to see his teacher on the screen. And let me see what else. I feel like I'm missing some things, but I think for what we were working with during COVID and doing educational work at home. While I did have two other students that were online learning also, we did okay. I think he definitely missed a lot of things that would not have been missed if he was in the building. And I mean, we can't really help that, but once COVID kind of, they had a little handle on it, special ed kids, our kids with IEPs, were able to go back to school. So I did opt to send Daniel back to school, and it went really well. I think his school did an amazing job with the cases of COVID that they did have, which was not many. Even as COVID is still progressing, we haven't had really a lot of closures with either of the kids' schools here in our district, which is a good thing. Um, but I feel like educating a child on the spectrum can be sometimes difficult, but you just have to kind of ask questions, know what your child can do, and make sure that the things that they can do, they're doing to the best of their ability and you're helping to the best of your ability. I am not a speech therapist, so I don't know the ins and out or the correct terms that a speech therapist would use while teaching a child, but I do know how, you know, I perceive things that I've seen while we were doing the virtual learning. So I use those things in our day to day situations with that we do around our house and in public. And same thing with OT. I think no, I'm not an OT specialist, but as a parent and then as an educator myself, I kind of know some things that you should do with children and how you can get them to manipulate their hands to do certain things. So it is a little bit difficult when you have a child on the spectrum because sometimes the directions that you try to give may not sync with what they're capable of doing, but you just have to take your time and practice with them. So as a parent, I feel like you have to educate yourself in some things like the different therapies that your child will receive once they're diagnosed, and then based on their needs, you have to kind of become a speech therapist, you have to become an OT, you have to become a PT, just so that when your child is not getting those services on a day-to-day basis, or if you can't if your child's not in school yet, you can still do things to help your student or your child while you're at home. And it's always good to learn things so that you're adding to their education. I feel like a lot of children um, on the spectrum and off the spectrum, when they're home is kind of like their, I don't want to say playground, but home is kind of like their, just like adults. When we come off of work, when we're home, that's our relaxation time. But I feel like with children on the spectrum, it's always something that you can use in your house to teach your child. Even he's 8, but he's still able to learn how to do, day-to-day activities. Now, Daniel is 8, but he's not like your typical 8-year-old. So he is definitely behind some. So some of the things that a 8-year-old will do, I won't have him do, but I'll have him do maybe something that a 6 or 7-year-old could do. So I try to give him little chores, and if I tell him like to pick something up, he can do that fine. Um, and I'm not going to have him in the kitchen, but he definitely loves to be in the kitchen. But I just try to do normal things with Daniel to make him feel just like my other children are in the house. That's pretty much it. Welcome back, Chanel. So I was pretty much finishing off tonight with I was telling Powerhouse and Khadijah how the services that Daniel received are speech, language. I mean, speech is language, but speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. And I was just saying to finish that, I try to learn different techniques that each of those services provides him to do at home, because he's not always going to be in school, and even when he's out of school he should still be learning those different things. So I try to incorporate some of those things in our daily activities at home, and that was pretty much it. Does anybody have any questions about any of the services that he receives or some of the things that they do in those services?
I do have a question. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Khadijah.
I was saying you said he gets the ABA therapy.
So he started with ABA therapy. He doesn't get ABA therapy right now. But he did start with ABA now, and when he was in early intervention, he did ABA first thing in the morning, and that was a little bit difficult for him. For I'm not gonna say every day. Some days it was a little bit difficult for him because she put so many demands on him.
That's what I was going to ask. I heard bad things about ABA. I haven't put my boys in it yet.
I think ABA is very, very efficient. It can be a very good tool, but it can also it is very demanding, because they are actually like putting those demands on them. And like kids are very strong to go off and on the spectrum. And I know personally Daniel has a very, very strong personality. If it's something he doesn't want to do, he's not going to do it. And your job is to kind of see those behaviors and try to stop them. So if it's something that your child is accustomed to doing, like if Daniel wants to play with bubbles and he's having to put the bubbles away, and now he's having a meltdown, she has to work through that meltdown with him, and then she has to present bubbles again until he kind of figures and understands that I can't act like this to get the bubbles. I have to kind of be patient and wait. So I think ABA can be a very good tool, but it's a process. It's not going to be easy when they first start at all. It's going to be a lot of pushback, and because it's not like speech therapy where you can sit and have them showing pictures. It's like it's a give and take. It's a give and take from the child, and it's a give and take from the adult that's working with the child. So I think it's easy to say, oh, something is all good or something is all bad, but you have to go through it, and then you have to try to process it, because it's not going to be like, oh, ABA, and it's going to, be sunshines and rainbows. You're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days with it. But I think it is effective.
I was going to say that, just to speak to ABA, I think that I would agree with you that it is effective, and it's challenging for both the child and the parent. It's challenging because when we have our kids at home with us, there are things that we allow them to do that we don't expect them to do because they're at home. That's their safe place. That's their place of comfort. But we always have to remember that when we have a child on the spectrum, or a child that has a special disability, that we constantly have to be reminding ourselves that it's not just the behavior that we have to worry about that they have in our homes, but what behaviors do they have when they go out into the community? How are they going to be able to interact and engage with the community in a positive way that keeps them safe, and then also the environment that they may be in safe too. So that's one of the things that I find that's challenging. Like there are certain things that you might let Daniel do at home, that once he becomes accustomed to doing that at home, he's going to go out in the community and do the same thing. And when he goes out in the community and does that, it might not be appropriate for the community. And what I'm saying appropriate, I'm talking about the school community
Yeah.
specific, right? And the other question I wanted to bring up to you is that you said IEP. I don't know if you ever defined what an IEP was.
An individualized education plan. So each child, when they're diagnosed with autism or having a special need, maybe it's a learning disability, they have a meeting. You have a meeting with the teacher, psychologist, and everybody comes together and they work on a plan that's going to best educate the student. So you have goals. A child may have 3 goals, a child may have 10 goals, and these goals are things that the child's going to work on throughout the day, throughout the months, and as they master them, they change. So like I said, Daniel had PT, and when he was in early intervention, like one of his PT goals was to toss objects into like a container or a crate. So he had to master, let's say he had 10 tries and he had to get at least 6 of those balls or socks into whatever he had to throw it into to master it. But he had to do that so many times. And then, like, say if his goal was to throw 10 objects into a container and he had to get 6 of them in a container, he had to do it 30 times, and out of the 30 times he needs to have mastered that skill 25 times. Then he will be able to go to a new goal. And so each goal is supposed to build upon the next goal. So once you master a goal, the next goal should be something harder that they need to master, but within the same realm of things that he was doing before, if that makes sense.
That does. And then my last question is, um, how often do you get information on his IEP? Like, how often does it get updated? As a parent, can you go and say, listen, I saw Daniel doing A, B, C, and D at home. Is he doing this at school? I would like to revisit his IEP.
So IEPs, sometimes they do them quarterly. As a parent, you can schedule an IEP as often as you want. So say we have an IEP meeting in September, the first week of September, and I see the goals and I'm like, okay, let's try these goals out. And let's say we come back 2 months later and I feel like these goals are not really helpful for him, or he's not, achieving what he should be achieving with the goals, I can set a meeting up anytime I want to. And when I set the meeting up, I would just, reach out to his teacher and let her know that I would like to set up an IEP meeting. And then she pulls the whole team together and we have meetings. Sometimes the teacher may call an IEP meeting if she feels as though the goals are not meeting his needs, or he might be mastering the goals and we need to change them. So before they change any goals on the IEP, they always let the parent know. So sometimes it can be a formal IEP meeting, or sometimes, the teacher will reach out and say, I see Daniel has mastered this skill. How do you feel about if I change this goal to say this? And then if I agree, she can change it, and then she'll send me a document, a new IEP document, and I have to sign it because this is a legal contract between the school and Daniel. and myself. So once we change anything on that document, it always has to be signed over. So IEP meetings can be scheduled from a parent whenever it's needed, or by a teacher when it needs to be updated, or you can do it quarterly.
I know you also said that he was in the child care program. Were services available to come to his school? And if they were, who paid for them?
Okay, so when Daniel was diagnosed with having autism and he was provided the services, his therapist came out to the child care center, and there was no payment from myself or the child care center. The services that Daniel receives are free because he has autism. So the speech therapist was free. The school didn't have to pay for it. The child care center didn't have to pay for that, nor that I have to pay for it. So just like he has the services in school, the center allowed the therapist to come into the school and work with him while he was there.
Last question. Did you find those services beneficial to Daniel?
So I found the services beneficial for Daniel. I think the beginning was touch and go. Um in the beginning when he started all of his services, I believe it was uh, what service? I want to say it may have been speech therapy that it didn't start right away. I don't know if it was speech or PT. It was one of the services. They didn't start right away. So what they had to do was backtrack. So they had to keep an account of the hours. So how many hours he was supposed to have this service, they had to make up for it. So that was a little bit frustrating when you have a child on the spectrum and they have a service it's supposed to be provided for them. Now, excuse me, sometimes just like with school, he has speech in school, and when COVID hit and then they kind of said, okay, kids are going to be out of school, we had all of our services. And then when COVID kind of eased up a little bit and school went back full throttle, a lot of teachers didn't come back. So Daniel's speech therapist didn't return. So for him, he didn't have a speech therapist. And it took them a while to fill that role because they just didn't have any speech therapists left in our district. So we had to backtrack the time. They had to keep an account of all the time that he missed. And when they did hire somebody, she had to do the hours that she owed him plus what he was supposed to get on a daily basis.
When my boys started early intervention, it was like right during COVID, and they had to do all their therapy through Zoom, and it was so hard and horrible, especially because it was new to all of us. But they didn't have any therapists, and then when when the therapists started coming out to the house again, um, there weren't any therapists. We at one point we did look up. We was able to like meet them at this playground, and they would come out there, physical therapy, and actually it was all three: physical therapy, OT, and speech. And they also had a special instructor, but it was really hard trying to get 2-year-olds to look at a laptop, and then they couldn't really see. Um, it was horrible. It was a horrible experience.
So our our computer therapies, I'll say, it definitely was. Now Daniel was in kindergarten, so he's not the only one that's on the screen. And the teacher is trying to make sure that she's looking and engaging with each of the students, but sometimes the student that's on the screen is having a meltdown. Daniel had plenty of meltdowns throughout the time that we had Zoom school. So it's like you gotta put the Zoom on pause or mute it, and like the teacher's like, okay, can you point? And sometimes Daniel doesn't want to be on the screen, so he's on the floor, and I'm trying to get him up. So I feel like Zoom school was a lot. I mean, it's easy when you can say to your son or daughter, sit down here, and your teacher's going to be right here. My other two children, I put them on, well, I have a high schooler, so I didn't have to really do too much with her. But my other son, I set him down at the table, and then, I'm letting him know, okay, you're here. This is what we have to do. Now I'm going to go over here. And I still had to keep my eye on him, but my focus was more so on Daniel, because I know that he's not going to sit at the table by himself. And the first chance he was out of there. So it's like I kind of had to sit and guard him. I had to put him towards the wall so I can be right there. So if he tried to get up, I could stop him from moving. So I think, when COVID hit and we had to do the whole homeschooling, it was a lot. And I was really, really excited and happy when they said, they were opening up schools for special needs students. I was really excited because it was a lot trying to do be the home teacher and then help with the therapies. Like I said, for us, PT was the hardest one to do while we were home. I would try to make it more fun. Like I had the whole swing, like everything. I had a little balance beam, the big balls. But no, it didn't work. I feel like for students on the spectrum, being in a setting where they have their therapists right there in front of them is the best thing. Hands on for them is the best thing. As parents, we can try our best, but if that's not our skill set, it is a little bit difficult. Powerhouse, do you have anything to say? Would you like to add to the conversation?
Just want to know. Oh, I didn't even have my speaker on. No, I just want to say, my question is, do you feel that all the services you have in place, do they help Daniel?
I think the services do help Daniel. Like I said, I think that he gets more when he's in school versus when we were trying to do it at home. It was very difficult trying to do the services at home because you really don't have the tools that you need. I tried to get as much as possible that he would normally use within his classrooms, but sometimes it's difficult to get those specialty items. I was very grateful that his teachers, whatever I needed, if it was something that I could get myself, they made sure I knew where to get it from, or they would one of his teachers sent a lot of things in the mail. So like his OT teacher, she had like special crayons and special pencil grips. She sent a lot of things home. She recommended some scissors, and I was able to order them off of Amazon. His teacher, his regular teacher, she sent a lot of things home when they found out that school was going to be closing. She sent a lot of materials that she was saying, we're going to use this when we do when we do morning meeting. I'll have it on the computer screen, but you guys can use this in the home. So I think we all made the best of it. I feel like they definitely missed a lot of educational time being away from school and not in that environment, because when you have a child on the spectrum, their classroom looks different than a general ed classroom. They have a lot of visuals. They have a lot of manipulatives that they use throughout the day. the teachers are more equipped with the things that they have. So even within the goals of the IEP, so yes, I was doing the ball toss, or like we even did socks. So instead of tossing a ball, I would roll up socks and he would have to toss it and then go get it. So like we did make the best of it at home, but I definitely feel like he missed out on a lot. And that's again why I really like how they have the extended school year for students on the spectrum, because even in the summertime, students lose information. So it's like you're kind of continuously giving those children the opportunity to learn new things and still maintain what they already know.
I have one last question.
Mm-hmm.
That's my last question, seriously. Like, what are your academic goals for Daniel as he progresses? Have you thought about that?
So just like any other child of mine, I want my child to read. I want my child to write. Now that looks different for Daniel because when you have a student and they're learning to read, they read out loud. Now Daniel doesn't speak, so he can't read out loud. But I have to kind of adapted. So my thing is like I want Daniel to learn at his pace, but I want to make sure that he's learning things. I know he has a love for letters and a love for he really likes educational things. So I know that he has the ability to learn these things, but it's just going to look different for him. Like he's 8 years old, but he may not be on what you may think a typical second grader is going to do, and that's fine because each child has to progress at their pace. I just want to make sure that he is learning. So, if it's that he's learning his alphabets or he's learning his colors, it doesn't matter to me as long as I see that there's some progress being made. Like Daniel's not able to write his name, but his teacher got him a stamp. So if it's like like a paper that she's passing out, he's able to stamp his name on his paper himself instead of having a teacher write his name for him. So that's giving him some ownership and him being able to say, this is mine, my name goes here. So, like the education is going to look a little bit different from other students and even other students on the spectrum. Just because you're on the spectrum does not mean you learn the same way. So another student may be able to write his name and Daniel is being able to stamp his name. A student may just point to the letters of their name. So learning is different no matter if you're on the spectrum or off the spectrum. And even two students on the spectrum, they don't even learn the same way. So I just want to make sure that he's learning things and progressing. And I don't know how fast, because it could turn around, like just because he's on the spectrum doesn't mean that he's not going to talk, or like he can start to talk and just show us so many things that he knows that we don't even know he knows. Now I definitely know like he knows those letters, but he can't express that he knows the letters to me. But if I'm pointing to a letter, he definitely tries to sound it out. So I'm like, okay, so he knows that the A makes this sound and the B makes this sound. So even like if I ask him, like red, he'll point to red. So he's showing me that he knows things, but he's showing me in his way. Is there any more questions? Because I am going to let you ladies go. It's almost 8 o'clock, and I only try to keep y'all on here for an hour. If we don't have any more questions, I'd just like to thank you all for showing up tonight. Again, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Mom's Little Corner. These videos will be posted every Thursday. If you have not seen the videos on YouTube, please go check them out. And again, thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.